Hundreds of workers at Algoma Steel in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario are now laid off. The company said in December it would lay off 1,000 workers. Many of the Algoma Steel employees impacted had already retired, resigned, or are currently on sick leave. The company expected to lay off more employees in the future.
We're all humans making all these decisions on who should stay and who shouldn't based on seniority, and people are phoning in. We're having to go back and double check our work to make sure that it is based on the collective agreement.
Canada's steel sector is now under serious pressure, with major disruptions centered around Algoma Steel in Sault Ste. Marie. But this didn't come out of nowhere. It's the result of mounting economic pressure, structural challenges, and decisions that have been building for months. What's being described as sudden and devastating actually had warning signs long before the layoffs began.
So sad as the layoffs begin at Algoma Steel. What are you hearing from the workers who are now impacted?
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me. It's devastating news. I mean, we knew it was coming, but to know that it's coming, to actually see the day when it actually comes, it's devastating. We're talking about human beings, we're talking about workers, we're talking about families.
Market conditions were shifting, costs were rising, and global trade dynamics were tightening. Yet the situation was still being framed as stable, even as risks were clearly increasing. Now here's what's being called the breaking point. Up to 1,000 workers at Algoma Steel in Sault Ste. Marie are facing layoffs.
Steel saying it's necessary to protect the company's future in light of these extraordinary conditions. Algoma recently got $400 million from the federal government, along with $100 million from the provincial Ontario government in loans to protect jobs in the face of these tariffs. So you heard the Conservatives pushing the Liberals on that there.
These are not projections or estimates. These are real notices affecting real households. And while it's being presented as unexpected, many workers had already been preparing for changes, just not this soon.
Heard Pierre Poilievre in his first English comments there in question period, questioning the Liberals on these layoffs at Algoma Steel, 1,000 layoff notices.
The original timeline suggested adjustments years down the road, closer to 2028. That's what people planned around. Instead, the shift hit much earlier, forcing households to react faster than expected, which adds even more financial strain to an already tight environment.
Laid-off steelworkers should visit the Action Center as soon as possible and not wait until their employment insurance nears its end before acting. He advises them to bring their resume and any training documents they have to help with their job search.
Then comes the explanation, and this is where things get interesting. The situation is described as changing conditions, evolving markets, and unpredictable shifts. But when you break it down, the factors are actually very clear. A major industrial sector was facing rising costs, global competition, and trade pressures that were already visible.
We're talking about communities that's now going to be impacted. So there's a lot of devastation that's happening right now in this Sioux.
Yeah, and a huge knock-on effect. The federal and provincial governments have said that they would extend loans to Algoma due to U.S. tariffs.
This wasn't a hidden risk. It was a known challenge. Steel markets are highly sensitive to global demand, pricing shifts, and trade barriers. When those pressures build at the same time, the impact becomes difficult to avoid. Now look at the financial support side, because this raises serious economic questions. Around $500 million in combined federal and provincial loans were directed toward the company. The goal was to stabilize operations, support the transition, and protect employment. On paper, that approach makes sense. Support the industry, maintain production, and reduce disruption. But the outcome tells a different story. Large-scale layoffs still moved forward despite that financial backing. So it raises a key question from an economic standpoint.
I knew that the situation will come, but as the plan was like it will come, this kind of thing will happen in 2028. I was prepared for that, but it came almost 2.5 years early. That was shocking. I'm not prepared for that.
If funding is meant to stabilize jobs and operations, but layoffs still happen at this scale, then where did the support have the most impact? This is where efficiency and allocation of capital come into focus. Providing financial support does not always guarantee employment stability, especially when broader market forces are working in the opposite direction. If demand weakens or costs rise too quickly, even large funding support may not fully offset those pressures. Looking at it from the outside, it highlights how difficult it is to control outcomes in a globalized market.
Understanding of how these funds will be used, will it prevent future layoffs?
I think the latest announcement from the government, let's go back a little. I mean, the government is doing what they could do. It's a moving target, and some of the actions that they're taking, they are basically transitional. I mean, it's good to see some assistance for workers, but we need a long-term plan. We need to ensure that unfair trade actions are taken care of. We need to strengthen Canadian industrial strategy.
Capital can support transitions, but it cannot fully eliminate structural challenges or external shocks affecting revenue and competitiveness. Now shift to one of the key external pressures behind all of this, U.S. tariffs on Canadian steel. This is a direct economic factor, not a surprise event. Tariffs reduce competitiveness, lower export demand, and put immediate pressure on company revenues. And when revenues drop,
has made promises to bring in carbon capturing and other different measures. So the Bloc very much they're pushing the Liberals on climate policy and using Guilbeault's stepping down as a reference.
The response is almost always the same across industries. Costs get cut. That can mean scaling back production, delaying investment, or reducing workforce levels to maintain financial stability. When companies cut costs, jobs are often the first to go. That chain reaction is not complicated. It's basic economics playing out in real time.
We need to strengthen Canadian industrial strategy and ensuring that no worker is left behind. And I think that's the key. The Band-Aid solution that's going on right now, it's only to stop the bleeding for a short period of time. We need to make sure that, again, unfair trades is dealt with, and we come up with an industrial strategy that will ensure long-term viability for workers in Ontario.
But the response to these pressures has felt consistently behind the curve. Instead of getting ahead of the problem with a clear and coordinated strategy, actions have been more reactive than proactive. Financial support is announced, adjustments are made, but there is little sense of full control over the direction of the situation. One economist described the pressure in simple terms, saying the company had to operate with a gun to its head. That phrase captures the intensity of the situation. The transition to electric furnaces was already part of the long-term plan, designed to happen gradually over time. That kind of transition is usually managed carefully through retirements, retraining, and phased adjustments that reduce disruption.
After the steel plant, Sault College has hosted 4 information sessions. On hand to offer support, officials with the newly opened Steelworker Power Action Center, employment professionals, and college staff.
We offered information in a classroom about employment supports available, the programs we offer, and then accessibility into them through our academic upgrading or through continuing education. And then we opened up a fair style type of information so everybody can talk one-on-one about their own personal situation.
But when external pressures like tariffs accelerate the timeline, everything changes. What was supposed to take years gets compressed into months, and that removes flexibility. When transitions are forced at that speed, companies tend to rely on the fastest cost-cutting tools available, and that often leads to layoffs. It becomes less about planning and more about immediate survival in a tightening financial environment. The shift toward electric furnaces also reflects broader economic changes tied to efficiency and long-term cost structures. Lower operating costs and different energy inputs can reshape competitiveness over time. But transitions like this require careful timing and strong coordination to avoid major disruption.
Action Center itself actually opened up on January the 5th. It's manned. We're still ramping up, but we're actively engaged with all the employees of Algoma Steel that received notice, as well as suppliers who have been impacted by the downsizing of Algoma as well.
When multiple pressures hit at once, rising costs, global trade barriers, and structural industry changes, the burden often falls unevenly across the system. And the most immediate impact is usually felt at the workforce level. While broader strategies focus on long-term outcomes, workers are dealing with immediate financial realities. They are thinking about income stability, rising expenses, and how quickly conditions changed compared to what was originally expected. This highlights a key issue in economic transitions.
Algoma Steel recently reporting Q2 earnings, perhaps not the business numbers that you would like to see. That 50% tariff still exists on steel.
The gap between planning timelines and real-world impact. Long-term strategies may take years to unfold, but financial pressures on households happen right away. When those timelines don't align, the result is sudden disruption. A situation that had been building gradually turns into an immediate shock, and the tools in place may not be fast or strong enough to fully absorb it. Now look at how the response is being framed. Terms like support, assistance, and transition programs are used to describe the next steps. On the surface, that sounds structured and reassuring, but when you examine the timing, much of the response appears to come after the main impact has already occurred.
What happens to those workers? What do they do?
All right, now look, the game plan for us is to make sure that we as a union is there to support these impacted workers. We're working with the government right now. We've got the Steelworkers Power Action Center that's already established. We had probably about 400 people already signed up, and I assume that another 250 to 300 would be enrolling shortly, right? And the Power Center is basically there for these workers. We're there to ensure that, we don't have a crystal ball, but we'll assist them through this difficult time, and that's their focus right now.
That shifts the focus from prevention to recovery, which is always more difficult and more costly. Short-term measures can help stabilize conditions temporarily, but they don't always address the deeper structural challenges that caused the disruption in the first place. Without a strong long-term strategy guiding the industry forward, the same pressures can continue to build beneath the surface. So the real question becomes clear. Where is the long-term plan that prevents this from happening again in 6 months or a year? Because a structural issue cannot be treated like a short-term disruption. And the impact goes far beyond the workers directly affected. When a major employer scales back, the effect spreads quickly through the local economy. Small businesses lose customers, suppliers lose contracts, and service providers feel the slowdown almost immediately. Even support centers being set up are not just handling workers, they're also dealing with businesses connected to the steel operation.
It's going to take several years to get the diversification of product mix up and running. So it's going to be an impact for a little bit of time, but we're hoping in the long run, we'll have workers recalled back to this work.
And in the meantime, what happens to those workers? What do they do?
All right, now look, the game plan for us is to make sure that we as a union is there to support these impacted workers. We're working with the government right now. We've got the Steelworkers Power Action Center that's already established. We had probably about 400 people already signed up, and I assume that another 250 to 300 would be enrolling shortly.
That shows how deeply interconnected the system is. When one major part weakens, the ripple effects move fast across the entire community. You can also see how quickly the system had to react. Within a short period, hundreds of workers registered for assistance programs, with many more expected to follow. That kind of surge shows how sudden and concentrated the shock really is. And it brings up another key economic concern. Why does the response always seem to come after the disruption has already started? Support systems are activated once layoffs are announced, not before. That turns what could have been a managed transition into a reactive recovery process. If the risks were visible and the pressures were building, then preparation should have been part of the strategy from the beginning. Instead, the response infrastructure is being built in real time, while households and businesses are already dealing with the consequences. These patterns point to a broader issue: insufficient forward planning in the face of known economic risks. And when preparation falls short, the adjustment becomes more abrupt and more difficult to absorb.
Ensure long-term viability for workers in Ontario and Canada.
Kevon, is there any chance that these laid-off workers could be rehired later this year or down the road?
Our hope is that they will. I mean, we'll continue to work with the company. We'll continue to work with the government. One of the main products that we're trying to do is diversification of the product mix at Algoma. And once we get there, then, obviously it's going to take additional workers to come back and do that work.
Looking ahead, the pressure does not disappear, it evolves. New environmental cost structures, global competition from lower-cost producers, and shifting trade conditions continue to shape the industry. That means the same forces that contributed to this situation are still active. There is talk about future demand driven by infrastructure, manufacturing, and industrial projects, and that outlook does offer some potential stability, but that demand sits in the midterm, not the present, and that's the key gap. Households and workers are dealing with immediate financial decisions right now. Income loss, uncertainty, and rising costs do not wait for long-term recovery cycles. When you put everything together, the pattern becomes clear. A major industry faces pressure, the response is delayed, support arrives after the impact, and retraining becomes the fallback option. Meanwhile, long-term optimism is presented while short-term instability remains very real. That gap between projected recovery and current conditions is where economic strain builds the most. It's where uncertainty grows and where both households and businesses struggle to adjust. And at its core, this situation highlights a recurring economic challenge. Large-scale decisions shape industries from the top, but the immediate financial consequences are felt at the individual level. Until that gap is managed more effectively, these cycles are likely to repeat under similar conditions. And that's the situation for today on Yesterday Canada. If you want more updates like this, drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next.